TF2 has been around for a long time, longer than I would personally like to admit, and it used to get updated with new content. These were called updates. In all seriousness though, any creative making anything will have ideas that just really don't pan out. I certainly do. 75% of the videos I draft out don't even get made. So today, I'd like to just go over a ton of the cut content that was never added to the game for a variety of reasons, whether it just didn't work within the game's style, or it was Big Mother Hubbard. Valve certainly had a fair share of these weapons that were cut from the game. The list for it on the wiki is shorter than you'd think, but to be fair, this is only the stuff we know about. Imagine what Valve was cooking up that we could have never thought of. This sucks, can you bring out the cock exploder? Much like the cock exploder, the nail gun might be the most well-known cut weapon from the game, as Classified has spread the word of TF2 lost media. Remnants of it are still in the game, and there's even a nail belt hanging out of the dispenser. Unfortunately, it was scrapped for reasons that no one really knows. Personally, I think they wanted a more burst damage focused approach for Scout, like most of the primaries in TF2, and thought they could make more side grades of the scattergun, as there aren't really that many variations you can make with a nail gun. Now, there are also weapons that we just have the code for. No art or trailers to reference at all, like the walkabout for Sniper. It would have been obtainable after a certain number of achievements, maybe after hitting a certain milestone, and it would have functioned like a DMR with no headshots. It is possible that this was a very early draft of Sniper, testing possibly a different kind of class to play, but it's frankly way more likely it would have been a side grade. I would have loved something like this for Sniper, and could be a simple enough switch that makes him way more enjoyable for players like me. It would almost be like the hunting revolver from Classified, and you already know where this is going. I mean, come on, that video got 60,000 views. The revolver was another weapon that Classified pulled to reimagine it, and I will say the stats we got for this thing are pretty unique. It doesn't have a scope and has the 20% damage reduction, but zoomed in shots deal 50% more damage. And unlike other sniper rifles, this one would reload a clip instead of just one round in the chamber, but the main attribute would be that it would shoot a projectile round. Wait, am I reading that right? Hang on, give me, you wrote this part, right? I wrote this part? Wait, so does that mean? No, that can't be true. I mean, yeah, it was probably cut because it was a bad idea, but like, I thought of an idea that Valve already thought of. They should hire me. Why don't they hire? Oftentimes when this stuff leaks, what piques people's curiosity is how they got it. I mean, a dude with a fire stick hacked Rockstar for info about GTA 6, so after that, I'm just gonna believe anything can happen at this point. When the hell is Reagan showing up? Well, for these next weapons, they were added into the game of October 2015, and were playtested silently over several months. Well, when they released Jungle Inferno almost 10 years ago, oh my god, some cut weapons backpack icons and models were found, and some scraps. I picked out my favorites to speculate about. The Afterburner was a model contributed by the Neo Dement, and Valve had been experimenting with it, but possibly opted to release the Dragon's Fury instead, as a part of the Jungle Inferno update. If I had to guess by its extremely vague name, it probably would have done more afterburn damage than actual damage. And thank Christ the Dragon's Fury got in instead of this. Dying in front of the resupply cabinet is already more embarrassing than it needs to be. With the Spitfire sharing a similar model, it's likely these two would have been possibly shipped together. Maybe as a flare gun with more afterburn damage, or a different gimmick entirely going along with the pilot aesthetic. With us speculating about the stats, it's easy to see why Valve cut it to instead add my favorite flamethrower, awesome gimmick, poo poo platter, and slap my nuts. You're gonna love my nuts. Speaking of heavy, Pyro wasn't the only one that got his weapons leaked, and some other mercs got their ideas outed as well. The Assault Cannon was going to be a primary minigun for heavy, and this one even has a demonstration video. It looked like it fired bullets. We don't really know much about the in-depth stats. I tried to use the Wayback Machine to check for more info with the links on the Steam Workshop page, but I never ended up finding anything, so leave a comment if you do find something. Also, while you're down there, feel free to subscribe. I'm trying to surpass Mr. Whoop Yo Ass in chess and subscribers. But this is a cut content video, which means Heavy didn't get his definitive side grade in time for Jungle Inferno. That was for another update. A heavier one. One day, my friend, and I'll see you in Valhalla. Luckily, God's favorite from Boston also had something else drafted up for him, as they were making a cool looking scattergun for Scout called the Specialist. It had a sleek gun metal, black and gray, with no brown accents, which makes it pretty unique looking in Scout's kit. The creator for the item suggested some stats below, and while it's unlikely that Valve would have followed, I'm thankful for it, as it gives me something to speculate about. It would guarantee mini crits for doing anything on the point, and nerf you with a 50% pushback from any damage. Would it have been pretty powerful? I think so, yeah, but Scout kinda needs that in the modern meta, as the scattergun and soda popper are insanely boring to me now, and who knows, maybe I'm just homesick for new content. Speaking of homesick, do you ever click the PDA spot for engineer and wonder why it's just with other PDAs? I do it all the time, at least once a day. Well, the handy partner was supposed to be one of those spare models. It would have placed a mini dispenser that even had its own attributes. I can imagine this would probably be cheaper to build, probably around 70 metal, while having nerf stats. I'm actually kind of upset this was never released by Valve, and I wish we saw some form of it in-game today. However, for this next one, I need you to understand something. This might be the most upset I am about a weapon never getting added, because the Viewfinder is single-handedly the coolest looking sniper rifle. They made another tech weapon that fits perfectly with the retro future aesthetic of TF2. The creator didn't exactly suggest any stats, but Valve had a feature that allowed enemies to glow in the scope, which could be an aesthetic choice or a full-on feature built into the weapon, maybe like spotting and putting a marker on someone's head. However, it was cut due to having bugs with the Source TV system, which allows spectators for pretty much any Source game until they found a workaround, which I guess they never did. Shocker. Valve had also made a blog post referencing some ideas that they just couldn't fully develop, that some fans had apparently been requesting rapidly, including a big bomb secondary for Demo Man, but they ultimately scrapped it due to the sticky launcher being already so powerful, and matching that power with a big bomb either meant breaking the game or making a useless side grade. They also said they had a high demand for something called a face stab knife, which they replied with an ample amount of sarcasm in a funny YouTube video showing just what would happen if they did do it. Good one, Valve. They also wanted to add a pyro weapon called the Sucker, using a reverse air blast to bring enemies closer, but that was cut due to just how the servers are set up, and that it gave too much range to the class that is close range. It's funny looking back on these as TF2 was in its golden age and seeing what people wanted. With the base jumper being announced through said blog post, and then later put in the game, it's stuff like this that makes me miss looking at what they were adding when I was younger, and itching to get my hands on any computer so that way I could try the game out for the first time. They were also going to add Big Mean Mother Hubbard. We gotta move on from this section. While there were around 3 to 4 real cut game modes that were found, I wanted to really only talk about one today. Luckily, there is a ton of info that has been cataloged that we can really go in depth about, and the other ones on the wiki are really just variations of this one, or game modes that could be described in a single paragraph. Raid was a game mode almost exactly like Left 4 Dead, minus the psychotic modding scene. It was even developed by the same guy, Mike Booth. Mike already had experience with TF2 as he made the bot code, so if there was anyone to work on this, it was him. Valve likes reusing stuff a ton, so I guess they wanted to see what Left 4 Dead looked like inside TF2. The full objective was never finalized before the mode eventually got put up on the shelves, but leftover code points to capture points and gated areas being the backbone of how this progression was supposed to work. And just like Left 4 Dead's finale where survivors have to hold out and wait for rescue, Raid was clearly building towards those same kind of intense moments where the map design itself is trying to kill you as much as the robots are. You'd move area to area and just try and reach the end objective where you'd bunker down and hold out. It's unlike anything that we got in MVM, as we are attacking towards an objective instead of defending the robots from attacking the objective. This creates a pretty interesting structure, requiring more input and planning than your average MVM session, as you can't just set up your heavy down there, your NG up there, and oh my god, we won? But easily, my favorite part about this game mode was the mini-boss and full boss battles planned out at one point. On the smaller end, you had 2 mini-bosses called Rockets and Nuker, with Rockets firing off rapid low-damage projectiles and the Nuker lobbing grenades on a slower interval. They were clearly designed as mid-tier threats to break up the flow between the regular mob waves. However, the real centerpiece was the boss sentry, and has some incredibly interesting mechanics behind it. It has 3000 HP, stuck and invulnerable by default, and is resistant to most damage sources even when it's not. But the keyword here is by default, as the entire fight is building around stunning so that way you can get a hit in. And to do that, your team has to pull off a 3-step skill shot combo in the right order with a 10-second window. Land it and the boss takes 1000% more damage for the duration, effectively dropping its health pool from 30,000 to a much more manageable 3,000. On paper, I love the idea of something like this combined with TF2's mechanics and classes. I almost feel as if it's a no-brainer. It would have been so cool to have an engaging boss fight while playing an MVM-like game mode where you progress through a map. Coordination with randoms would be hard, but once everybody gets used to it, it could have been a ton of fun. I just hope and pray that for some obscure reason, the only reason the MVM update is taking this long is because some mechanic like this is being added. Why Raid was scrapped and turned into MVM, we may never know. Maybe Valve thought MVM was easier to monetize, promote, and would be quicker to pick up a wider player base. However, if I were to fully develop this Raid mode, grab it by the reins, and make it on my own, it would be awesome to see linear, engaging maps with the upgrade system still fully attached. Raid was ultimately a game mode that had infinite potential, and I am immeasurably sad that it got cut. Maybe it could have been turned into a campaign with a story of sorts, pulling from the comics. But strangely, I think I would have preferred this more. Unlike adding another class, see, I'm getting good at these segues now. Look, I'll even put the right text for the next title card. The idea of adding a new class to TF2, especially modern day, has always just kind of been a joke in the community or a serious suggestion by newcomers.
TF2 needs 3 more classes. What the fuck are you talking about? No, it doesn't.
Truthfully, at this point in the game, with all of the patches, map design, and weapons being designed around the existing classes in that balance, it wouldn't make much sense to add one that completely switches up the entire game. However, Valve and others often teased around the idea in initial development with some standout picks. The Civilian is an obvious one that comes to the mind of most players, as he would have had a whole game mode around him, VIP Escort. With 200 health and an 83% move speed, no weapons, no voice lines, hell, not even an official model, this was an idea that Valve came back to touch on a couple of times, as some players have noted in the code, with the first one adding a ton of stuff, and the second one almost a year later in 2009 adding a third-person camera. As a concept, I don't think that it's that great, and Classified has a much better version of what it could have been. For a little bit though, you could pick the Civilian in the console before it was patched out. Luckily, I found some faithful recreation footage of it from 2009, which is just exactly what you'd expect. Besides that though, other ideas really didn't make it past early development conceptual stages. When TF2 was to be initially planned to be a realistic military shooter, like its older brother, they wanted to add a commander class. He would have given orders with an overhead view and lead them to victory, but this was ultimately another idea for the trash bucket. Robin Walker in a developer commentary elaborated on why he thought this wouldn't work.
For example, our initial versions of TF2 were focused on trying to build a game around the concept of a commander, a single player who had a real-time strategy view of the battlefield. But there were significant design challenges involved. For instance, how do we design the game such that the commander can have fun, and at the same time ensure that the players down on the ground can have fun? How do we ensure that the players and the commander value the output of each other? How do we ensure that the game is still fun if you have a terrible commander? Or conversely, if you're a great commander with a terrible team? We spent many months working on these and other issues, and never really reached a point where we were satisfied.
However, even after all of this, the community never really let go the idea of a 10th class, spouting rumors and imagining what they would like to see as a potential 10th. However, even Valve wasn't above the 10th class rumors. It even commented on it in a blog post with a satirical story involving hats and throwing shit. I won't quote from it, but it's pretty funny. I've linked it in the sources doc for this video. Hell, one fan was even so excited at the idea of a new class, they just went out and made a fake one. The guard dog is a pretty decent enough idea for a 10th class, being able to bring out medkits and health packs to teammates sitting around the map, sniff out enemies, and dish out some bullets. It's admittedly a nice, pretty funny concept, and one of the first examples of fake satirical content for TF2. With a well-made imposter website and just some really high-quality dog graphics, it wasn't long until the point where it got so much traction that Valve made their own blog post about it. A letter from Saxton Hale about just how truly happy he was with your invention. A lot of what I've discussed today in the past 20 minutes or so, I wish got in the game. Maybe it's my fatigue from no content updates, but a ton of the weapons, the raid game mode, maybe not the 10th class, this is all stuff I would have loved to see. Unless like fucking grenades! Grenades were a part of TF2 Classic and were some of the most powerful utility in said game. But when developing TF2 into the game that it is today, giving everyone a no-risk throwable explosive option just wouldn't work out well at all. Imagine the spam this could cause on a point. It would be ridiculous. There was an insane amount of these things planned, which is why I gave it its own section. Scout would have gotten a concussion grenade to knock people back. The nail grenade is for Soldier, which just shot out a bunch of nails, then exploded. The napalm grenade for Pyro, which would have set people on fire, and they still wear them on this bandolier to this day. The Merv grenade would be for Heavy and Demo, which after being activated would release a ton of miniature bombs. The EMP grade for Engineer, which would have taken away all of an opponent's ammo? What? The Heal grenade for Medic, which I do not have to explain to you, and the Gas grenade for Spy, because he's French, he smells, and that about covers it. It's safe to say that these are pretty overpowered, even in practice, and I don't need to walk you through why they are. It just is alone in concept, and I didn't even cover all of them. Everyone except Scout would have gotten a frag grenade alongside the utility grenade. Admittedly, while I think it could be a really fun concept, I'm glad these never came to fruition, because I think if I unboxed an unusual grenade, that would cause more disappointment than anything else in my entire life. Make it the second most disappointing thing. There's a mod coming out called Pre-Fortress that adds back the grenades plus some of the weapons I mentioned in the start of this video. I'd recommend giving it a wishlist as it could be the sequel that we needed. Valve not adding cosmetics to the game, no matter how flawed, seems so not like them it would almost be like if former President Reagan showed up at my house. Yo, get out! The most recognizable is probably also the most legally complicated. This hat, of course, would be the Bonkin Flash, modeled directly after the Flash's masks, lightning bolts, and all. Full red and blue textures were already built before someone at Valve presumably looked up from their desk and just went, wait. It was ultimately pulled for copyright concerns, which is funny considering they added a Mario cap to Engineer, and I'm still wondering how Nintendo's ninjas haven't made that creator disappear completely. From one lawsuit waiting to happen to something that got cut for a completely different reason, Monday Night Combat, an old game, had a crossover promotion with TF2, and the original plan was to put in their giant grinning mascot head Bullseye directly onto Scout's shoulders, because they both play baseball. They both are baseball guys. If you look at the model, you kind of understand immediately why it never shipped. It was so visually obnoxious that it just broke the art direction of the game entirely. Valve quietly swapped it out for some other cosmetics that fit with the game more and are just way better. Not everything got cut for being too loud and abrasive though. The Legionnaire's lid is one of the cooler looking hats. It was a Roman helmet for Soldier with a team colored feather thing on top. Best guess people have found was it was gonna be an internal test for what would have become the paint can system, since the shader data in the files points to an unfinished color tinting experiment. The Defiant Spartan, however, eventually filled the same Roman adjacent niche, but also the Roaming Roman got added a year later and it's basically just the same hat, and that one wasn't even made by Valve. So I guess everybody got their wish. During Scream Fortress 2013, a pyro cosmetic briefly existed that wrapped the mask in these dirty bandages and cracked the goggles to reveal little white pupils. It was in the Halloween bundle icon, it was in the game files, and then 3 days later, it was just gone. At this point, it genuinely might be a Mandela effect, or maybe I just made it up for this video, or maybe I should really get rid of the mold in this house. However, my absolute favorite cut cosmetics have to be the Jungle Inferno hats. These would have probably been some items that you could get for completing contracts, which just reminded me to finish my contracts. The Mercenary Park hat, a well-fitting white cap with some fun detail, the Bananas hat, a sporting bright yellow cap with a new mascot, and the Never Forget hat, commemorating Poopy Joe. But easily, my pick for the best hat in this entire section has to be the Yeti Park hard hat. On first look, it doesn't seem interesting at all. However, there was code in the files for it for a war paint to be added to it. Imagine putting your favorite war paint on a hat you can wear on all classes. Or what about an unusual war paint? How would that look on the hat? This is an idea that I personally believe to have a lot of potential, and if I was a workshop creator, I would be making at least one hat with this feature. In all of the research I did for this video, there were some ideas that were so absurd or funny that I just couldn't not bring them up. This will be a speed round of my absolute favorites that didn't fit into a definitive section. A day after the Sniper vs. Spy update dropped, there was a texture found in the files that very closely resembled a woman's, with black surroundings. It was only there for a little bit before being removed. This led a ton of fans to theorize if Pyro was really female, or maybe it was just Scout's mom, or maybe it was just Valve messing with us, with some people getting turned on. There was also plans to put turrets in the spawn room at some point, although it was never specified what game mode this would be in, or if it would be a map exclusive. A blimp for MVM was planned for a long time, but could have been cut due to time constraints. A model of it leaked, and I wonder how this would have changed the structure of the mode. For MVM as well, they were going to make the upgrade path a trading card system. This is what they would have looked like. Maybe upgrades would have been random, and you never knew what you were going to get. Look at these dice. These weren't here. There are a ton of achievements as well with custom artwork found, most of them referencing some kind of training mode. Maybe we could have gotten a more fleshed out tutorial, but it was never released in favor of the coaching system, which is now broken in-game. There are also several unused taunts and animations, my favorite being Engineer Test and Engineer Vomit. Okay, this video has got to end. I appreciate you sticking around till the end. If you're here, you might as well subscribe. And despite this video's length, there's still some other stuff I found lurking on the wiki back pages and forums. So if you want a sequel, or want me to dig into the files myself, let me know down in the comments, or if there was something I missed that you think I should add into the next one. I will also be putting all of my sources and everything I reference with links to everything. I really want to put out a special thanks to the Cutting Floor Wiki, Internet Archive, and the TF2 Wiki itself. I couldn't have made this video without you making the info so accessible, and it couldn't have been done without your contributions. If you want to see me what is wrong with TF2 itself, watch this red video. Or if you just want to see a playlist of my best work, that's right here. Also, I'll be uploading a commentary style video of my thoughts of my first serious year of YouTube on my second channel. Please go subscribe if you want to watch that. Thank you for watching my video. Seriously, thank you. This took a while.